Okay, so then you can take note. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 5 o'clock. And roll call. Looking around, everyone's here. Public comments, we have no public. The agenda, other than that, and Matt will say. Does anybody have any additions or changes to the agenda?
The agenda. Just a quick question. I'll support that and then ask a quick question.
All in favor?
The question is,
Jane had a question.
are we going to get a report on the fire?
Yes.
And I don't.
There's
am I not
a
seeing
note
here?
about vandalism. on
It's,
here.
yeah,
Oh, on
Yeah.
the agenda, okay.
yes, and I can fill in.
So we had a motion by Ken, seconded by Jean to approve the agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
The consent agenda. The minutes, has everyone had a chance to read the minutes? Do you have any additions, changes, corrections?
I'll move to approve. Are we approving the minutes or are we approving the whole consent agenda? The whole consent agenda.
Well,
Oh, we did that. We just did that.
Okay,
No, we approved the agenda,
okay.
so we're now doing.
Oh.
So I guess we-
consent agenda.
Oh, consent agenda,
That
right?
was good. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Let's go down through the whole thing. The minutes, any questions on the minutes? Okay, the financial report,
To make it official in the meeting, the question was to make sure that the $5,000 paid to Prime Newhoff for the park plan was charged to the 2022 budget and not the 2022-23.
sorry, I didn't bring that last month's report with me.
And just to check, just to be sure.
Yeah, but I did talk to Lori about that.
Yeah, I think we instructed Daniel to double check.
Yeah, so we'll double check. Any other comments? I'll make a comment. This report, the one, the first one we come to, page 1 and 2, it looks a little confusing because there's so few charges. It's the first budget of the new year. So we only have a few short charges. So we have like a heading and then a summary line. And some of them just have a heading and a summary and they're right after each other. As the charges get filled in, this report will expand to include all the charges between, and if you look at the very top one, it says elected official salary, and then right below that, elected official's salary. So the bottom line is a summary. There was $600, and the $600 was removed, and we have 4,200. So as additional things get charged through the year, that area will expand. So that's why that report looks a little odd. At least when I first looked at it, I thought, "Man, this is weird." Anyway, so that's my comment. Any other questions? And under the dog park donations, you'll see we've got 2 additional benches, or two benches that was collected. And I have a third person who I talked to the other day, and she's definitely interested too. So great, you have the potential of a third bench here. I've talked to both of these folks. There's Poly Products asks us to have something signed by the people to verify the description that's on the bench, the verbiage that's on the bench. And so I talked to both of them, I'll send them emails. So Lori has the form, and is there Alicia?
Yeah, Alicia.
Okay, Alyssa Said she wanted the forms back, so I'll sign the forms that say we agree, and we'll send those back.
Great.
So. Both of those folks, are older folks, and they're not into, let's just call them, it's easier to call them. Than trying to set up, you don't check your emails. I think that covers anything. Any questions, discussion? I move we approve those consent agenda.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
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 Matt's dog park plan. That's the highlight, well, not quite the highlight. Daniel's might be the highlight of there, but you're close second. You've got
I'll
the,
take it. All right, thank you guys for your patience in the development of the plan and for letting me come and present it to you. Does everybody have a copy and who's had a chance to kind of digest it a little bit at least before now? It'll kind of help me, explain, but, yeah, so,
can we move that out?
yeah, where do you guys like this? Let's get it set up right
It's
for you.
like centrally located.
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle?
Yeah.
All right.
All
I'm gonna
three.
have to look at it while I talk though, because otherwise I'll be having to remember exactly every detail from memory, which I probably could. Oh, I can, yeah, I'll stare at that if you guys want to stare at the big ones. All right, let's do that. Thank you. How's that? All right, so, yeah, again, thanks for letting me work on this plan. It's been a lot of fun to work on. After walking the site and whatnot and kind of looking at, we've had lots of good conversations about long-term goals for the site. First thing I want to point out is that, one of the primary goals for the master plan was to be respectful of the land itself, be respectful of the kind of the character that you want to maintain here, right? So this is probably not the site that gets turned into baseball fields, right? Or has a lot of high intensity mowed turf. This is a park that could use some upgrades, some improvements, but we're going to try to keep a nice kind of a rustic character, I'd say, to it. So that's the overarching of how we're going to develop the plan. So there's some different areas that I kind of am calling out. So we've got obviously the dog park area, which is existing. Currently, obviously has the gravel parking lot, 2 fenced in areas. One of the dog park areas isn't really used, has some issues with some invasive plants in there that are causing problems. There's obviously the nice walk in the woods that has some challenges at times with wetness, but for most of the time is a nice little walk off leash dog area. And then as you head to the back of the site, I learned some interesting history. I think we might have talked about it before, about how the site was used to borrow sand for the highway, which kind of left it in this disturbed state, right? And you can actually see out there, it's kind of interesting, there's a tree that looks like it was left over from the original grade in the middle, and you can see they must have taken out 4 or 5 feet of sand from the whole area, which is what now you have sand in that middle area, and these kind of little ponds that were created, by accident almost. So, and then of course this site is surrounded by woods, and a lot of that woods is hard to say how old the woods is, but it's a nice woods, right? There's a little bit of work you want to do maybe with some invasives back there, but it's a nice woods, I think, in general, in terms of its character for park use. Obviously, when looking at parks, there's groups that always are very passionate about parts of what they want to do, but in general, right, we want to create parks for everyone, so for the public, because although there are always specific uses that work well on certain sites. So the dog park is working great, let's keep a dog park, right? We're not going to try to get rid of the dog park or anything. Let's enhance it. One of the other things that has been discussed is, well, because of the disturbed nature of the middle area, there's an opportunity there to take what's there and enhance it. So that's kind of the thought for that too. So again, those are just big overarching kind of ideas. Then additional layers have been added in terms of what else could we do here? We talked about the running trails. There's the need for running trails by the school. The group here has kind of expressed that that's a desire that they'd like to look into and see, is this site gonna work for that? We'd like it to work for that if we can, but you guys asked me to review that, and I do think with a little bit of work, it can work well for what you wanna do there for cross-country trails. So looking at the plan, one of the hot things that kind of drove the trail design, because it was, can we establish a trail that is long enough to meet the needs of the cross-country group? And can it be accomplish the widths? And they also wanted some gentle curvature to it so you can maintain a good speed. There's not a serpentine trail back and forth. That's not ideal for what they said they wanted. I think you can do that. So the red line that loops the whole site, and I've walked it, hiked it, and it is doable, is about a mile. Measured it out, is the red line that loops the whole site.
So as we're looking at this, it'd be like the outer loop.
Yep, the furthest outer loop
Furthest outer
is a
loop.
mile, about a mile. It came out to 0.97, but with a little creativity during construction, you could push it to 1 exactly, I'm sure. So knowing that a mile and a half, I believe, is the ideal length for an actual event, if you wanted to host an event here. I thought, okay, well, can we create a secondary loop? So that's what the other red line is, that traverses kind of the back here by the existing tower along the drive, and then takes this kind of front area of the woods into account. That loop comes out to about 0.57 miles. So again, I think that depending, we could obviously get the track coach out and see, where would you want to start and stop. But so that big concept I do think will work. Now, like we mentioned before, there's sand. So the sand is going to be a long-term concern. So I would recommend topsoiling, seeding, and then still keeping your eye on it, right? Maybe limiting the amount of use you put on it. But I do think that, so sand is actually a really good stable surface to work on. If you can get grass established, it can take a little more use. So I think the areas you'll find that are concerning in the long run with that will be just the hills. So you ramp up right here into the woods, you ramp back down here. Same thing on this side, you ramp back up into the woods. And then let's see, you come around. Yeah, oh, and right here is the other spot, you'd ramp back down. So anytime we kind of enter into this middle sand mined area, there's some slope that is gonna probably have, this is gonna be a little steeper through there. So you wanna keep your eye on those areas. And during construction, if you could make them a little less steep through a little bit of grading, I think that will help. And I do think that's possible. As you guys know, there was some existing trails cut in by volunteer. So I wanted to try to use as many of those as I could. So I do think you're going to be able to use a good portion, but not all of what he's created out there if you followed this exactly. So one of the areas that I tweaked slightly would be this corner here. The existing trailhead was up the hill onto this fairly steep side slope right near this guy's house. And it looks like where he shoots. But anyways, it's a steep side slope, and then he had the trail drop back down because there's into this, which is existing trail. This is following existing trail. So I thought, well, let's cut that off a little early and get up into the woods before we get way back here. It's going to be more gentle, and the grade will be more consistently equal through here, which will just make it a little bit easier not easier for the runners, but you'll have less long-term erosion problems that way, through that area. And then coming around the backside here, the existing trail did drop down into kind of, this is like a wetland symbol. It is kind of wet down where he was putting the trail. He went down and then he went back up. So I'm proposing that you skip the down part, keep the trail on the higher ground. Cut a new piece of trail kind of through this higher ground to skip that low spot, and then come back out on his trail right here, basically. and then you can kind of continue along. The other piece of trail he had cut in that I'm gonna proposing to use is from about right here in the middle, there's a trail that cuts in. And it runs up to here. So this piece is existing, but this piece is not existing. So this would need to be a new trail cut in to kind of complete that loop. And this is a really nice stretch of woods through here. There's 100 different routes you could take through there. And this would be a nice little easy connection to do there. So, again, if we're going to continue with kind of what was flagged and cleared, this stretch here is existing flagged. And then you kind of turn the corner back to here and then it's gone. You don't see the flags really anymore, but we walked it and you can get through.
Walked and you dragged us through it.
Well, yes, we ducked and crawled and took a little break here and there. It's fairly thick in there and it's a little bit wet in the back, but it seemed like it was doable, right? Yep. So, I thought that was a big win, right? Let's get this trail. And so the other thought with that outer loop trail was because there was talk before, and one of the concept plans online maybe showed the cross-country trail looping back through the sandy area over here, kind of. And my thinking was, let's keep the middle kind of sacred. Because what I'm proposing, and you'll see on the plan, is to do a little restoration over time. I think you'll want to maybe connect up with Outdoor Discovery Center or a group that, is really going to be able to hone into the details of how to improve this site. This site has a ton of opportunity for bird, fish, if you had dig deep enough ponds to support fish, turtles, snakes. They're cool little riparian ponds, right? And so I would dig some deeper, some shallower, but they're all kind of interconnected. I wasn't sure at first, but I looked up and they're actually all interconnected. So there is a little causeway right here of water, and that's kind of a neat little feature. And I do think, it'd be kind of neat to, over time, plant some more native species in there, provide some habitat intentionally, maybe in some ponds that are deepened a little bit, for turds and turtles and birds. That was kind of a funny little time. I've never done that before. Turtles.
Turtles instead.
Yeah, we call them turds as
So most of the water there is basically groundwater, so when it rains a lot,
yeah,
that area drains into those spots,
yeah,
and when it doesn't rain, they dry up.
correct.
So if we made them a little deeper,
They do wet more
it would
often.
be, a lot
Yeah.
more.
Yep.
And
So
some
I was,
people call that a vernal pond,
yes,
which is a thing. Google it.
yes.
But you can't, it's, according to
Right.
DNR, it's okay to
If you're creating
move the
habitat with the purpose of enhancing the wildlife, then they will let you, yeah, you can definitely do that. You're creating you're creating wetlands and better habitat, which they would love.
Yeah, and I when I looked at this plan too, and I talked to Matt a little bit about it before the meeting, I really liked how the middle, it has a lot of potential. Like right now, it's kind of like naturally doing what it does, but like you could really do some neat things there in terms of creating a enhanced natural space with the right plantings and a little bit of grading, and that fits well with some different grant opportunities and things. So
Yep.
I think it's a cool use, and we had an old plan from like 15-20 years ago that just showed a huge pond in that area, and this is a little more nuanced and accessible, I think, for
And a little
some
less
of the-
aggressive.
some of the boardwalk stuff.
Right,
that's
you would have
shown
to
there.
dig a giant hole to make a.
Yes, I'm keeping all of the wet areas where they were. I just proposing to make them a little bit deeper or bigger in some cases. And then you'll notice there's kind of this angular walkway through there, right? That's kind of could you walk through the sandy areas and whatnot? Yeah, you could, but I do think that once you establish this cool habitat, it's gonna be much more pleasing and accessible for everyone, wheelchairs, whatever. If you had a little at-grade wood boardwalk. I don't know if you've been out to Rosie Mound or some of the other parks that kind of head out towards Lake Michigan. They have this on-grade wood boardwalk. It's really, you just lay down some timber and you put your boards across, that's it. And that just gets you up off the ground a little bit, lets water come up and down a little bit, because it's gonna come up and down naturally anyways. But now people can use it when it's wet, when it's dry, and they aren't gonna disturb what you would find, I think, if you just let people walk through there, it's just gonna be
It'll be all over. Now, the
all
Outdoor
over,
Discovery
yeah.
Center has like a raised walkway, but it's like gravel. And so
I don't know which one you're talking about, but I can kind of picture that
yeah,
idea.
because like,
Yep.
so when you're out there and you're going like from one building to another,
Mhm.
instead of like walking all over the place, there's a very definite spot where
Yeah.
they want people to walk. It's like a raised, but
Yep.
it's mostly gravel.
Yeah, it's like chips and vines.
Sure.
Yeah,
Chips and fines are a good accessible material. I feel like a boardwalk is a little bit more in character to this kind of a space in terms of like what it would. It feels to me less intrusive than building little gravel roads. And it's actually gonna be less maintenance, I think, over time to have a wood boardwalk, even though it's wood, if it's cedar or something. Because the gravel is gonna get shot everywhere.
Well,
It's,
and if it's sand underneath it, it's gonna disappear.
it's gonna
pretty
mix
quickly.
into the sand, you're gonna be adding to it a lot. Yeah. Gravel does work great in a lot of places, but I wouldn't necessarily use it over existing sand.
well, I don't know what they did out there. I thought,
Yeah.
I'll go back out there and ask them.
Yep.
Or we have them come out and see what they suggest.
Yeah. And this kind of a thing, you know, you could grow into it. This is, you don't have to build it all at once. You could start by doing part of it, you know, and then over time do the connector pieces. And one of the key features on this, or the area too, is, which I think got a little bit of positive feedback when I brought it up before, was kind of a nature observation tower. So how high you get could be yet to be determined. It'd be cool if you could get high enough to see the lake. Don't know if you can. I haven't done the study on that yet. At the very least, get up a little bit to be able to like overlook the whole wetland area. You'll get some really cool views. That'll become a focal point, kind of a focal point. Yes, there's cost involved with that, but it's just kind of that's kind of the big picture idea that you could work towards if you guys liked it. So that is the trails and the natural restoration area. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, so I would say, each one of these little pond areas, I have just little overlooks, just a way to get off. Maybe you'd have some interpretive signs, a bench to like, and just incorporate some education into it. Get you a little closer to the water.
The trail in
Uh-huh.
off the street,
Yeah,
I see past the regular dog park parking. It looks like you've indicated other parking spots there, that would.
right here
Marksman,
along the drive here.
Yeah.
So that
there,
the concept there was, if you did have them like a meet, like a track meet here, and they have buses coming, where are the buses gonna park? I thought, let's give them somewhere to
I
park.
think it's a good idea, I was kind of wondering.
Yep.
What the hell if we have
Yeah.
a meet there, you know, they're gonna end up parking on the street, and that's
Right.
gonna be a whole of this too.
That was just a little road bus parking.
Oh,
Could be gravel, whatever, you know, it doesn't have to be paved even necessarily.
But there are more parking areas all the way along.
Correct.
Right,
Correct.
beyond the bus parking.
Yeah,
They're
so
all
while we're on the topic of parking, obviously it's all gravel out there and you can stay gravel as long as you want to. Gravel is a fine surface to use, it's cheap, takes a little bit of maintenance, but if you did wanna go to asphalt, you know, you could grow into it in phases. So my thinking would be, you know, the most used area right now, the first parking lot, obviously is the one for the dog park is used the most. If you wanted to, it's wide enough, but just about wide enough right now to do 2 bays of parking on both sides with a drive down the middle. If you did want to pave it, this is about how big of a parking lot you could get, which I believe is approximately probably 24 spaces, 26 spaces in there. I think right now you can probably fit maybe 10 or 12 cars on the one side. So you could double that, I think, pretty easily in the same footprint approximately too. And then I was trying to think, well, where else would we show parking? Do we want parking way back further? No, let's keep the parking kind of centralized a little bit. And let's utilize the things that are already disturbed. So obviously you got the drive coming back. It's kind of, there's some nice flat ground on that side of the drive. Cause, and the reason I didn't put it on the other side of the drive, the north side, is because it does drop down pretty quickly there. And kind of starts to look like habitat. This side's already just needs a little clearing. And you could have as much parking as you want. At any time you'd like, right, grow into it gradually. Along that edge, if you wanted to incorporate more parking, if the park use demanded it. I think that would be the last part you'd do. I don't think you would probably build that right away.
Right, so you have some feel for how many.
Yeah, like I would build out your existing parking lot first. Then I guess you could do the drive parking second, or you could consider this other small parking area here third. And so the function of this one is just to have secondary parking lot that would be able to be utilized for, I guess it's more so for somebody who's coming here to do the nature thing. If you're coming here to do the dog park thing, you park in this lot. If you're coming to do the nature hike, you can park in this lot, and then also at a track event, right, there's probably gonna be a need for more parking anyways. So this is where I'm proposing a kind of a phase 2 or 3 parking lot. And along with that, I have a sidewalk and a picnic shelter just to have another place for somebody to have a picnic. Still talking about drives and whatnot. I thought about parking back by the tower area, but I kind of felt like, let's just keep the gate where it is. Let's just let that be what it is. Can stay a gravel drive just for access for maintenance. I have the running trail going through that area, but I didn't think we needed to encourage cars back there. I don't know if according to
And it could always be added.
it could be added later.
Yeah.
I feel like whoever maintains those towers would probably appreciate a little security to it, in the long term also. I don't know that it's dangerous necessarily, but I just thought it was kind of unnecessary to push parking that far back.
So the dog park itself, is
Yep.
there any significant changes to the dog?
Minor changes, I guess. Well, I guess it depends what you consider significant, but
Changes.
so rather than, because the small dog area is not being used, and there is a
It
little
is
bit
used
occasionally used.
very occasionally. I know there are a lot of people to mention that were angry about some thorny growth in the back, but the
Yep.
dogs always were getting.
Yeah. So it's with this idea, which we could adapt and change if you wanted it, but I'm proposing to remove the small dog area and just make it into a lawn. It's already cleared. It's not being utilized for the dogs right now. The site doesn't have really any general picnicking areas. It would be a natural, easy spot to add a picnic shelter and to get some just turf to grow
And that
for a family picnic.
that would remain fenced off for
I would actually remove the fence.
you can't do that. You cannot have food at a dog park.
Yeah, you don't have
Oh,
a picnic
food
in the
in a
dog
dog
park.
park.
It'll be outside the dog park area.
He's removing the fence.
Yeah, you'd have to still have.
Not the fence from the big dog area, just the two sides.
Okay.
Yeah, I
two
think what
sides
you're
are
talking about
closed.
is the big
Oh.
dog area would still be there. You could even subdivide that if you still wanted a small dog area, but.
Yeah.
What's in the small dog area now, all that fence would go away.
Not just perimeter.
On the perimeter.
Okay.
Oh.
Except where it's needed. Obviously, you need to keep the fence on this edge.
Yeah.
Where
And then the
everybody
off-leash area
says-
No, I misunderstood that. I thought you were gonna remove the fence between the small. and the
No.
large.
No, definitely need to keep those uses separate. Exactly. The dogs are already food focused enough, right?
And I've seen some
People fighting. the
people
dogs all they
will
want.
bring food in there,
Yeah.
even though they can't read it, it's in a big sign in English.
Yeah.
Don't bring food in here.
Yeah.
I saw a couple bring a nice picnic lunch. They set it out on the table. And it took about 3 minutes till a little dog jumped up and grabbed the sandwich and ran away with it. And all the other dogs chased him. It's quite a scene.
That
So,
sounds kind of fun.
Maybe you were gonna get to this, Matt, but I know one
Yeah.
thing that you and I talked about briefly was if you build a restroom, you need an area for a septic tank and a drain field that's kind of grassy. So I think, you'll notice
It's already cleared.
there's a spot for a future restroom you know, whether that starts out as an enclosure for porta johns or becomes a fully functional bathroom. You know, I would think if, as you were to build out the rest of this plan, you'd want a full restroom here. And there's already water right in that area. So you need a place to put your septic and drain field, which could go kind of in that area.
And if we're gonna host track events there,
Yeah,
Well, I would say probably for the track events, you would just, the school would have to bring in some extra porta
really.
potties. So you, and,
Mhm.
cause then you see that frequently in running races,
Right.
that
Right.
they bring them in for the event, and that's part of, you know, they're making money on this, so they,
Yeah.
if, that can be part of their responsibility. We're not gonna build, bathrooms for 100 kids.
yeah, and then in that case, those porta johns could go, you know, along this area or along the drive somewhere and be no big deal. Yeah. The other part about the running trail I didn't mention was I tried to set it up too with this inner loop so that the start and finish for the races could end somewhere where you could have people watch. So for the elderly grandparents wanted to watch from their car here, they could potentially watch the finish line if the finish line's here. The finish line's back here. There's a nice long straightaway that runs between there. So it just seems like it's kind of set up well for visitors too.
Mhm.
And then the trail system, if you want to watch your kid here and then you can run across over to the other side, catch them on the other side, if you can beat them. You can do that or set up over there too, and you kind of have, that was one of the things that was brought up, was just multiple points of observation on the course. Or from the tower if you get to that spot first.
And I mean, we talk a lot about the cross-country function of the trails, but this gives you a lot of opportunity for any use, right? I
Cross-country
mean,
skiing.
Yeah,
Be great for that.
skiing and, yeah,
Mhm.
anything there, so.
Yeah, and maybe we don't even call it a cross-country loop, we call it a multi-purpose trail,
Yeah.
and it's wider, and yeah, it would work great for two-way cross-country skiing then.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. Some things that are not maybe quite as obvious, in the Big Dog area, I know that we wanna keep the rustic character, I do think it would be good to have a sidewalk from the start point over to the opening to the off-leash area. For one, it's gonna be nice for when the weather's kinda nasty, or if it's raining or wet or dirty, it's a good hard surface to walk on. For people of all different, cause it is very sandy and loose out there, somebody who's maybe not as nimble on their feet might struggle to get through that sand. To get to where people like to sit along the fence, and then I do think it'd be great to have a little shelter there as well. I know there's a gazebo there, but it didn't feel like it was either not in great shape or wasn't really being utilized for what it maybe was intended originally, because it's kind of closed in a lot.
It's mostly used to get people out of the sun.
Okay. Do people use it when,
Oh, absolutely.
okay,
Okay, yeah.
okay. So maybe the shelter is not a high priority. But I was proposing one right where everybody likes to sit along the fence where you could put a bench and a pad and stuff.
The gazebo is nice because if you sit in there and your dog's wandering around, you've got like a 360 view.
Yeah. Yep. So you could also run that sidewalk I drew to the existing gazebo as a kind of a, if you wanted to, but I thought if it was paved, a sidewalk back to the off-leash area, if the off-leash area has nice bark, you know, then you've got a kind of a continuous surface that's stable. And then, yeah, I just really tried to connect some of the different areas with sidewalks. Again, I'm drawing them in a way that makes them look like concrete. They don't have to be concrete. They could be chips and fines, other materials. The parking can be gravel or it could be paved with asphalt. That's really kind of up to you guys, kind of what the people really want, or how you want to invest your dollars.
How good we are with grants.
Yeah, honestly, right. Yep.
And is the fencing, like the border that's sketched on here pretty much keeps the fencing in its current location?
Yep.
And then the trail, the walking, running trail runs outside that. or
Yep.
the edge of it.
Yep. Yeah, the most intensive areas of trail cutting is gonna be definitely this area from here through this area back and around the back here. This was very thick back there. Still definitely doable, but that's You know, obviously, that's a little bit more cutting than even this. This woods is a little flatter, a little more open naturally. The forest floor is more open, so it's easier to get through.
So my question is,
Yeah.
the next step,
Uh-huh.
if we said, okay, tonight,
Yep.
we want to allocate X number of dollars, $5,000 to start something that could be usable maybe this fall.
Yep.
Is that realistic? Could we sit here and say some of these existing trails that run down along the road and back in here, like
Mhm.
part of this loop, we could actually have Glenn grade some of this and air chips or whatever.
You guys,
we want to do.
yeah, if you guys like to plan and you adopt it, and yeah, you could get somebody to price that out to cut trails, and I don't see why not.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, my opinion, Jim, partly. How far do we want to go with it, you know, to get a start, you could do that, or you could say, you know. What's our overall cost estimates for different pieces of this, and then, you know, apply for a grant. You know,
Use that money as
use that
match.
money to try and leverage a match for a bigger implementation of this or parts of this.
Now that you have a plan, I think that you could present, right, Dana, we've talked about the Spark grant.
Yeah, so like the trust fund grants are due in April, the Spark grants are due this fall, and then they're gonna have another round of in the spring, and. So I mean, I think without a doubt, you could try and start. Physically doing stuff, but I would wonder if we would wanna use that funding to. Go after a grant and try and, you know, leverage $3 from the state for every dollar. That we would put in.
So. So what does everybody think? Tell me. What, do we do what Dana said, don't do anything and use the money we might use and start working on the grant application? Do we do something now with some of our money to sort of expand the use now?
How long is the grant process?
So it takes a while, I mean, if you apply in April, you find out if you get it like in December. And then they get you grant agreements in January, February,
So that would be running into 2024 then.
Mhm.
yes, before you would get your money, yeah. And then you gotta bid it and all that, so.
Yeah. You have 2 years to spend it.
So,
Yeah. But I mean, one approach could be to say, let's, you know, work on the trails outside of a grant. And then you could always consider looking at grants for a lot of the other elements of this too. You know?
When you, as you think about these grants that you know more about, Dana, than we do, what are their priorities, and would they likely support particularly the focus on like the natural restoration area and moving there and putting in the making it ADA accessible by making sure that you put the boardwalks in, or
Yeah, I think,
what are the priorities there? And then we can see if they match our priorities.
yeah, and that's a great question, because I think that's something we'd have to think about. You know, all the hard surface stuff. Parking, driveways, shelters, restrooms, all that, they want it to be accessible, but it's very fundable. You know, plans for restoration and at grade boardwalks. We probably want to talk to them about the actual natural surface trails, because we'd have to find out if they would fund that. If it's not fully ADA compliant, so I don't know, I mean, I don't know if we've run into that on other projects with trails. I mean, I think they'll do it to an
Yeah.
extent, but.
I think if you're incorporating accessibility for most of your work, or, you know, they won't
Yeah.
throw it out because you don't have all of it accessible, but if you have items that they can stand behind, they'll score favorably.
So we did in 2017, we did a passport grant, which is a DNR application for River Bluff. And the idea there was to make the trail accessible. And So most of the work was involved with grading and the surface, like a chips and fine stone
Mhm.
surface on that trail. And the whole thing had to be ADA accessible, and that was the main part of the grant. So, yeah, we probably need to look at it and say, is there another other stuff we wanna do, and that the running hiking trail is part of that, but doesn't necessarily need to meet ADA. Cause it can't
It
unless
wouldn't.
it's got that wood chip and
can't.
fine trail, so.
So I like what two of you are saying. What I would like to do is work on that outside mile trail ourselves.
Mhm.
And, cause that's just most of a lot of it is just removing some trees and bushes
Mhm.
and probably having a small dozer or something run
Yeah.
through it and take out the
Things,
worst of the highs and the lows.
it's things you can
And
handle.
it probably would not be ADA compliant, and then apply for a grant to do all the inner stuff. So the natural area,
Mhm.
the bathroom, the picnic area by the dog park, moving the fencing. In other words, create the ring, because that also gives us something that we can report to the commercial, to the local papers about this is what we're going ahead with, but this is where we're going. So when we get to Mr. DeFranco's issue, for a millage, this is the type of, so we're doing something now, but this is where we want to go with it. So you have, you know, both avenues pushing forward.
Mhm.
Makes sense to me.
Who lays out, so there are places here where the trail doesn't match the trail that's out there, and especially that inner loop
Mhm.
part.
Mhm.
Who lays that out? Do you stick up a bunch of flags and put it through? I mean, what's the step from there
Yeah,
to looking at what has to be done so that you could say to somebody,
Yeah.
go ahead in and start cutting, as opposed to them
Somebody's gotta go
just
up there and put the.
starting
right,
cutting?
flat,
We
yeah,
gotta tell Vanderbeek, take your flags away, and we want the flag here.
Yep.
Now, is that something that you guys would do, or is that something that we could hire you to do? or-
yeah, that's definitely something we could do. It's not part of the master planning process, but yeah, somebody who you trust to lay that out could do it. These lines are where I think they should be, but not precise to the foot, right? So it's gonna be something, you're going this way, and if we followed my line perfectly, oh, there's a big tree, well, we'll go around the big tree, right? So
Yeah,
flagging, it's gonna be the best way to do
I
it.
could like envision if we're implementing this outer loop part, you know, we get Matt out there and maybe with John and one of us and actually, you know, come up with a route, and then we would need to get some kind of information together to get prices from some contractors, I think, right? Cause I mean, we're talking about grading, cutting in places, bringing topsoil in certain places, so we have to come up with like a basic plan or some typical details so that we could get a couple apples to apples prices from some local excavators, and then we can implement it from there. So whether we try and take that on ourselves or have somebody develop that and get bids for us or whatever.
Even if we took it on for ourselves, we're not talking about the five of us grabbing our shovels and our dozers. We're talking about
I'd rather not
contracting
do
with
physical
somebody.
labor, but I can do mental labor.
I'm kind of a mental case myself.
Yeah.
So Ken, let me ask you a question. You had talked about trying to do something that the track team could run on this fall.
Well, I'm trying to think. A lot of it's there, or a big portion of it's there. So like if you instead, for like this fall, you didn't do the trail along 134th, you use this, but a lot of this is here. We know the trail needs to be cleaned up a little bit just outside the fence between the dog park and the freeway. And then instead of trying to cut this one through, just have them come out to 134th, they can run along the street.
They can run along the
Right.
street, you're saying?
Cause this is.
Yeah, well, along 134th,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there's no traffic there.
Right, where?
And there's enough of a shoulder there that they would be able to run through that. I mean, I guess I can show it to the cross-country coach and see what he thinks.
Did we, I don't know, I kind of want to be respectful of Matt's time too. Do we want to hit him with more questions or is there
Yeah,
stuff
okay,
that
that's probably true.
we need to get going? or
Yeah, are there
something?
things that you guys would like me to change? Cause this still has draft on it.
Okay, so yeah, that would be the question. We could sit around, fool around with this. If we said, we've got a rough, actually go around, put some stakes in the ground. We could go back to you guys and say, for X number of dollars, we could walk around there and you could put stakes on the ground that a
I
guy
would
would
like that.
bulldoze.
Well, and if the little tweaks you might have to this plan. Get us there and I have budget left over to do it, I'll just do it part of this project. You
And I
know,
think we'll want to know too, like, where's he thinking? We want to cut the slope down a little bit. here and there.
Absolutely.
You know, we could flag and put stakes in the ground out there.
Your name will be on this. You will be the person who designed this. So it might behoove you to make sure they put the hills and the whatever's in the right places.
yeah, I would
So
love to help do that part of it.
Yeah, I
I
would
do kinda have a vision
personally
for
like
what it
to
would be.
see, these done in the places, so the layout of the plan, done professionally, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right, so we could walk the ground with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Basically, and then little details where you're talking
Yeah.
about the grades and where the crossings and so
Yeah.
forth. Specifically identify those and the ground.
I just know the next time I go for a walk, I'm bringing a machete.
Right.
Uh,
Do we, I guess, what's our process for this? It's a draft plan. Do we want to
I move we accept this
give a
plan.
week and give comments?
Oh.
If we have any changes?
Okay, I just made a motion that we accept this plan as our working plan to begin to move ahead to lay out the outer trail and begin to look for grants for the inner parts.
Support that.
Right, and to add to that, we could, in addition to that, because like we were talking about, the grants are several years in the future.
Sure.
If we said to Matt, could we schedule a day where we would actually go out and identify something that we could actually do? We could put X number of dollars ourselves to have something that might be useful.
Well, see, once we have the flags in there, then we can go to Glenn and some other companies and saying, this is what we got, go walk it, and we want a trail X, number of feet wide through here. What are you gonna charge me?
Mhm.
My guess is Glenn will probably be the most cost effective because he has the advantage of being right next to it.
Yeah.
So,
And I think we'd have to tell them like, hey, we're expecting 4 inches of topsoil or whatever. You don't have to give them some specific.
No, I think we need to, the first step would be the flagging of it, where the, and how the hills are cut seems to me to be a critically important part of that. So you would help do that with whomever else is walking through. The second part, I think, would be maybe to help us just make the list of what is it, the flags are there, what are the things that have to be done to make it a runnable course, not it doesn't have to be perfect, but a runnable course. Then you can take that, you can give it to Glenn and say, this is what we're looking at, but I think really it would be good to consider the possibility of another bid as well. I hope, that our local guy is good, but I think we need to, anyway, but that's a secondary thing. Right now, I'm saying, let's accept this plan with the idea that Matt and others will walk through and that's
Right.
what, yeah, that's what we moved in second.
Okay, can we,
You're discussing.
do we all understand
Oh,
what you're,
well, we're accepting the plan and it's gonna get flagged, so then we can just take Glenn through there and see if there are any other contractors who want to give us a bid and maybe do that for the next month.
okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure we have some things we can do in the next month, so when we get back here that we all agree we can do something.
Because we want to be doing something through September and October leading up to a certain election date in November.
Right, so we can say we've done,
mhm.
give it as an example.
It's gone from plan to implementation.
Mhm.
So what I wrote here is Jane motion to accept draft plan as presented as working master plan.
Mhm.
And proceed with marking locations, grade changes, and developing details for future bidding.
Yes,
That way.
and second of that, yes.
I did.
Right.
Okay. All in favor of,
And Elliot smiled.
Hi.
I,
Good idea.
Aye.
okay, so based on that, we can contact you and maybe sometime in
Yeah.
August.
Sure.
We can schedule an afternoon where you can go for a walk.
I'll bring my real good boots and a machete. There's gonna be a couple spots where it's tough to get through, but you probably wanna get through, cause that's the right route to
No.
take.
I'll take my camera and take pictures of you and post them in the commercial record.
And
Look what we are doing for you.
look, an architect can get his feet dirty.
If, and Daniel, if more than two of us go, if three of us, four of us, whatever, that's okay, right? That doesn't challenge us. We're not making any decisions, we're just
Yeah, it could be just like a field trip.
Field
trip.
So just do not discuss official business, but you could go and form that.
but, and you know, for that matter, we could also post it that we will be having a, field trip. To let people know that we are gonna be out there walking it. So if they wanna come along, fine, they probably won't, but that way you disclose that, you know, and then say, no business will be discussed or action taken, but we will be,
Laying out.
on this day doing this. So they can't say, well, we saw four of you over there and what were you doing in secret? So. What would be my suggestion.
just, yeah, okay.
So ready to vote? You just voted. You got it.
Just voted, yeah, now we're
Yeah.
just, we're just jibber jabbering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So we should let Matt go?
Okay,
Yeah, well, I'd like to thank Matt, 'cause
Oh,
I think he did a nice job with this and pulled all the pieces together and something that we can work from for several years that really, I think fits with what we asked him to do.
right, we can include it in our 5-year work plan, we could do. Years, yeah.
Matt, remember your last name.
Levandowski, Levandowski.
I'll send everybody
Thanks,
his
Matt.
email.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Matt.
Looks
It was
nice.
fun to get out and do some hand drawing. I don't really get to do that as much as I used to as I've advanced in my career, but I love putting pencil to paper like this, so appreciate it. And I will leave the board with you.
Thank you.
Oh,
So you guys can keep that. Yep, I wish this was a sticker. I could just pull it right off. No longer draft.
I went to a workshop about getting grants that was funded by the state. And they enlisted, what is the most important, single most important thing when you're putting the grants, and lists all this stuff, budget, blah, blah, blah. Plan, the picture of the plan,
Always the picture, yeah.
the plan, it's
Because
the number one.
And if we give it to the paper, we give them that picture because that's the thing that people will remember.
So be sure to spell his name right.
Yeah.
Got it.
And double check me for spelling errors before it goes public too. I looked at it.
Our
very close.
paper prints things pretty fun, so.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I'm gonna head out, you guys. I
All right,
appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
We'll be in touch about a time to walk.
Yes, okay,
Sounds good.
okay. You're not on vacation at all this month, or?
Just a couple days next week to go to Unity Fest, but other than that, no.
Okay,
Do you want,
No big vacations, and I'll try not to get COVID for the third time.
before you leave, do you want to set a date with a couple, I don't know that I'm doing it, but with a couple people will be doing it? Do you want to do it now? Look at your
I'll-
calendar.
I'll need to go back to the office probably to look at my calendar, and
Call you tomorrow.
it's likely gonna be in the evening too, so I'll consult with the family a little bit too. Check my wife's calendar.
okay.
Smart man.
We'll be in touch. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. The next item, the Park Village. Daniel. Daniel has a lot to talk about.
I'm gonna go smooth this. No, it's so pretty. You guys did an awesome job.
Thank you.
Oh, Matt put it.
Matt did a-
Awesome, well, you chose Matt.
We chose Matt, we chose to
You
move
chose
ahead.
wisely. Bring
With
this
a
back.
little help from our friends.
Okay. So. Millage. The memo is pretty similar. One thing that I have that I didn't have before is I did get sample language from the attorney. And if you read it, it says, shall the tax limitation imposed under the Michigan Constitution on real and personal property in Saugatuck Township be increased by blank mills, blank dollars per $1,000 of taxable value for blank years, blank through blank, inclusive for, this is the important part, the operation and maintenance of parks, the creation and maintenance of public trails, and the acquisition, preservation, improvement, and conservation of park property and park property rights and natural areas. So a lot of that was coming from your recommendations. I did review it with the attorney just so I had an understanding of what it meant. And essentially what it means is that you can operate and maintain your parks, you can acquire new parks, you can develop and maintain public trails, you can purchase conservation easements for trails, or just easements rather for trails. But you're also able to purchase property rights just simply for conservation if you so choose. And I also discussed this with him, and we would be able to spend money if you wanted to on some sort of a consultant to act as a staff member, or a consultant for working on grants, or a consultant working on projects like this. So I did go through that with him, and the attorney said all of that would be covered by this millage language. If you do notice, and this was, I think this was a goof upon the attorney's part, it really wasn't a big deal to me. But I included it anyway, that the attorney called it Parks and Trails millage. And I left it like that just because I know it came up that you requested it be Parks and Conservation. But I did think it was interesting that he kind of unintentionally raised the question of naming again. And I did kind of selfishly take it upon my part to do a little survey that I sent out through our MailChimp. And partly I say selfishly because I wanted to see if I could put together a survey and how it worked and everything. But I also, wanted to know kind of what the public thought about certain words, what their reactions were. And then I also kind of wanted to see what the reaction was to certain combinations of words. So I'm gonna pull up the results.
Voted today, will my vote be in there?
Your vote should be in there.
Right.
So I'm just gonna pull this up. I don't know, it should be up already. Okay, so I asked this question. Trails is a word that resonates with me. And then I went through this process, parks is a word that resonates with me. Conservation is a word that resonates with me. See how people reacted. Most people found that it either they agreed that it strongly resonated with them, or rather they strongly agreed with that statement or agreed. For trails, what was
How many
it?
responses did you get?
95.
Oh,
Wow, that was pretty quick, because that just went out.
Yeah, that just went out. Yeah, so it's open, so we'll still, I imagine we'll still continue to get responses in.
Yeah.
I thought it would be dead after a while. I know that when I do this again, I should post at about 9 AM. Cause I think most of the people responded like immediately, but I still get like kind of batches of responses in.
Yeah.
So for trails, what was it?
Very positive.
Very positive. So 81% of people agreed that it resonated with them. When I asked about parks, it was even higher. So almost 90% of participants agreed that parks is a word that resonated with them. And then for conservation, was it about 87% of people said conservation is a word that resonated with them. So all of them were above 80%. Parks was number one, conservation was number two, trails was a close third. I also wanted to know what people thought of when those words came up. For trails, I was worried that people might think bike trails, and some people did think bike trails, but for the most part, I think people understood that when you're talking about trails, I actually have a cool little bubble option. Where is it? I don't know how to do it here, but most of them thought, they were walking trails, they were hiking trails. A lot of people said that, you know, they were giving access to natural areas, so like transforming natural areas into something that was. Could become accessible, could be open for recreation, so I thought that was interesting. You know, parks, again, people had kind of a broader understanding of parks. Where they thought of like natural areas and open spaces. So it was less traditional than I thought it might be. I thought people might think trails were more bikes, parks were more kind of swing sets, and the respondents had kind of a different understanding of that. Conservation, most people thought it was something that was preserving or safeguarding or saving, so it was definitely a lot less recreation oriented than trails and parks were. Even though trails and parks seem to integrate ideas of conservation, people, you know, their associations. And then at the bottom, I asked them, you know, which of the following pairs most resonates with you? Most people said, but the majority of people said, so a little under, maybe like 35% said parks and trails resonated with them. That was number one. Number two, at about 20%, were parks and conservation. That name resonated with them, or that pairing. And then third was trails at parks. And then fourth was parks and conservation. We did get a lot of none of the above. Some people were irritated by the fact that I didn't put a context to it. But I did want to just a raw reaction. I didn't want to kind of give any indication that this was associated with a millage. But I did get some people that said parks, trails, and conservation in their comments, so I thought that was interesting. But I just wanted to give you all a sense of, you know, it's hard, you know, so I feel like some of this stuff matters because there's the off chance that someone's never heard of this and they're voting, or someone's hearing it for the first time and considering whether they like it or not, and that initial gut reaction. But I think all those words are positive associations for people. All those words seem to be kind of in the wheelhouse of where you're going and your, you know, kind of your projects. But I just wanted to kind of give you that insight because you do have an opportunity to kind of name it again. I mean, it's not going to the board just yet. But people did respond positively to parks and conservation. People like all of those words. In looking at the millage language again, and I wish I had asked people about parks, trails, and conservation.
It's interesting though that you said there's a little bit more appreciation of the word conservation than of trails, and yet people more often chose parks and trails to parks and conservation. Were there can I see the comments? For
Sure.
Parks and conservation.
Sure.
Or how they want to name it.
Fred, how did it go? How do we do this?
Yeah, the very last one is go down.
See, it's all kind of mixed together
Oh, I
here.
see. Okay.
Unfortunately, and I think next time I'll figure out how to organize this better.
We had a psychology professor on. So.
I know. I know.
I thought I was the guy who did cheap shots here.
Yeah. This one says parks and trails and parks and conservation's about equal for me. Some people said just does. Let's see what this person answered though. What was there? Because I have to, you have to click on it sometimes to figure out what the heck they chose. They chose parks and trails. A lot of people just said that they liked the way that sounded.
Mhm.
It wasn't really more than that.
Simple, like gut reaction to parks and trails. Even
Yeah,
threw a third thing in there, you'd really be asking people.
it might be a lot.
I think maybe the attorney, the way he entitled this, if that's what most people like, that's the most positive.
Let's go with it.
I think that would be your wiener.
And when you read the language, it clearly says conservation.
Yes, yeah, conservation park property. Mhm.
Yeah. The other thing I think people assume trails kind of implies conservation because they think of it as giving access to the public to natural areas. So I don't know if that factored into it, but they were definitely indicating that in their, you know, what do they think of when they hear the word trails? they thought overwhelmingly recreational access to open space natural areas. So just something to think about.
Oh, thank you for doing that.
So now we just have to decide, I think the minimum was 5 years, maximum was 10. And my inclination is we're gonna go, we might as well go with 10, because we have to do it again at 5.
Yeah.
So then it's quarter, half, 3/4, or 1.
And the other thing about the 10, I did ask the attorney, I didn't get it, I think they got kind of lost, but I didn't get a response about the Headley rollback and when you can override it, but I do think there's opportunities to override it, but I do know that if you go for the longer millage, and let's say that there's an important piece of property that you want to purchase, we could go out for a loan based on how much money we are going to bring in for the life of the millage. And so like if you wanted, a lot of money right away, you could go that route, and clearly you have access to more money if the length of the millage is longer, because you're collecting more money over time. So that's another something, kind of wrinkle to think about. And then I talked to our assessor too, because I know we got into like, what's the average home cost and all that. And he said to totally avoid that, because what your assessed value is very different from what your taxable value. And just to go with cost per $100,000 of taxable value. So your house could be worth, $600,000, but maybe your taxable value is only like 200 because it's been in your family for a really long time. So it's really hard to say, based on the medium, household value, this is what it would cost. So he said, just go with per $100,000 of your taxable value. So it's really easy, 25, 50, 75.
And even you put it actually put per $1,000 of taxable value. So if the 100,000 is, what was it? Oh, it's a percent, 0.5. So. Yeah. 0.5 of 1,000. So, because you're supposed to insert that dollar amount in his proposal here, right? So.
Dana and Jim, you've been sitting here the longest. Where are the 3 newbies? What's your feeling as to how much we asked for?
I like the 10-year idea, because then you can borrow, like you said, you're guaranteed that. You don't have somebody saying, well, what happens to who's gonna pay it off? The village doesn't have to get the idea. So that's an advantage. Did you ask somebody about, when somebody looks at 10 years versus 5 years, whether they're more apt to vote one way or the other?
Yeah, the consultant who's been working on passing, he works particularly in conservation villages, but he's done park villages too. He said that there's really no statistical difference, that someone would be, from what he's seen, 10 years versus 5 years doesn't typically affect the way people vote.
So it seems like it would make sense to go for 10 years.
I would go
Yeah.
10.
I think so too.
So then the next question is, how much? 0.5, 0.75?
I think from our conversation last time, it wouldn't be 0.25.
Right.
I think we agreed that it would be
Yeah,
at
I'm
least
willing to
0.5.
go to 0.5. I'd have to be convinced for 0.75 and just get worried that when you get to a full mill, does that push somebody over?
Well, yeah, I think a full mill is too much, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at some of our other millages are a fraction of.
They are.
And
What were
so-
the ones we just voted on? Were they both a half mil? What was
No,
just-
they were 0.25. No, well, the senior millage was just under 0.5, and then the interurban was 0.25.
Okay, and then the one that's gonna be on there with us, the renewals. Do you know what they are?
Yeah, the road millage is I forget if I think it's 0.9655 or 9.7.
So it's almost one.
Yeah, it's almost 1, and then I believe the community and recreation millage is 0.25.
Okay.
So
So 0.5 would
0.5
be,
should be okay.
would be like, yeah, right smack in the middle of those two.
I would love to go for 0.75, but I don't, I want a W.
Right, the thing about it, like we just said, that when somebody with in their mind compared to other villages, you have a 0.9 road millage, which you think that's really important, and then which isn't quite that important, but it's more important than the cemetery. I think the cemetery is like 0.2 something.
0.25, yep.
So
Are we feeling 0.5 then?
it's okay with me.
Is anybody gonna make a strong case of why we should go for 0.75? Because the villages, the renewing villages, won, I think like 75-25 yesterday. Or 80-20.
Say it again?
The villages that were on the ballot yesterday
Uh-huh.
won big.
They won big. I can pull up the statistics if you
Well,
want to see it.
I'm guessing.
They did win big though. They both
Yeah,
won big.
I think they were both like 70-80%.
Yeah.
But you're asking for new money.
You're asking for new money. You are asking for new money.
You know, when I voted on that, I wasn't noticing whether it was new or old money. Honest to goodness, it just said this millage and I said, yep, yep. I wasn't saying, oh, this is a renewal or, oh, this is. So I'm not sure that it makes all that much difference to the voter.
The first paragraph I kind of skipped over. What I wanted was, this is what the money's for.
Yes.
This is what the money's for. And I look at it, and go, yeah,
Yeah,
who
that's
wouldn't
not,
want that?
So
apparently 20%.
0.5, 10 years.
10 years. For sure.
You want a motion to that effect?
Do you have a name too?
Oh, a name.
Parks and Trails.
I like Parks and
Parks and
Trails.
Trails.
Okay.
There are people who are anti-conservation
Well,
or
I
that.
don't know what that means.
That's a political word
It can be.
because it gets very close to conservative. And Parks and Trails. My motion.
So Parks
Support,
and Trails, 0.5, 10
10
years.
years, support,
So are we,
unless Elliot wants to support. You want to get in the minutes, Elliot?
so I had in the memo, there was a recommended sample motion.
That's for what gets sent on to the, oh, so we're gonna fill in the parts for that. And that motion goes on to the,
Yeah,
that's the motion that the township board has to pass.
yeah.
So we're saying
Is that
we're
we're recommending to the
To pa-
township
yes.
board of trustees to adopt resolution 2022-14, a Parks and Trails Village proposition to appear on the November 2022 ballot, and then I added for $500,000 for 10 years. Is
Yes.
that
You got enough for you, Daniel?
clear
Yep.
enough?
That's
Okay.
perfectly clear.
Wow.
That's exciting. I think it's a historic moment
It is.
for the community, you know.
We got a plan,
If they
now we
support
need
it,
the
we got a
money.
lot of great ideas and could do a lot over 10 years.
Yeah.
So do we need to do a voice vote?
I would roll call. That's what we did last time.
Jane,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Jim? Dana,
Yes.
Elliot?
Yes.
Congratulations, it's going to the board.
Add to the board.
They will vote
Do you
this.
want to mention this
Here.
thing?
I can't, do you want me to?
I,
Here.
millage discussion, millage language and vote.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay, so the next,
I can bring it up with comments, so get commission reports.
so the next item, is our planning meeting on the 16th. And.
Oh, it's on there, it's right on there, Daniel. Missed it, yeah.
Talk about that.
We have a time for that. It's just.
Yeah, on the 16th, I think it was
One.
4 p.m.
That's a four.
Yes, 4 p.m. The original thing I sent out was 5, but then what she sent back was 4 to 7, I think.
That's correct.
Daniel with my pizza.
Yeah, I'll buy pizza.
There it is.
I'll need your dietary requirements.
Eat
Required
everything.
here, long-
So do we need to discuss this any further now, or just that's what we're gonna do and she's gonna come up with a plan and help us get organized?
she's gonna come up with a plan, help you get organized. She's really looking forward to it because now she's getting into, planning. She's gonna charge us her hourly rate. It's already in your budget, so you don't have to worry about that. Unless anybody had like specific questions about kind of what to expect.
Did everybody get this then?
I sent that to everybody. I can print it out for everybody.
So I just had a chance just to flip through it and we won't need to do, I hope we don't need to do everything that's in here because I think we have a lot going for us already and hopefully it'll just pass this first time through. But when it gives the timetable, it says to start 12 to 18 months before, with your, okay, how about 12 to 18 days?
Well, and I guess, so what does Lene gonna do? Like, we have homework, right, to review the old park plan and our
Mhm.
previous kind of goal setting thing. Is it more of ideas and goal setting, or it's more of like, hey, you're doing a millage, here's how you can communicate with the community?
It's definitely more like a strategic action plan.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so it will, I think it'll function, it'll have, multiple functions. One of the functions will be that, it helps guide you in terms of what your future goals are, but then it doubles as this kind of communications piece that we can, put out there on the new website. It might be something too that whatever community campaign committee is formed, they can use that to begin to communicate to people, what this village is about and why they should support it.
Right.
And also, maybe as a tool to recruit people in the community to promote it. Because I imagine there's gonna be some key people. I did have a chance to sit down with John Vanderbeek. He's very excited about it. I know that he'll be a community proponent about it, for it. I had the opportunity to sit down with Anna Gregg. She is the kind of head of that Douglas Park project, and they've accomplished quite a bit. And I kind of let her know about it, and we were talking about kind of parks in general.
And the Rotary people.
And the Rotary people gotta reach out to them, but I think it's important to like start, talking to some key people in town, key groups in town, let them know what's going on. So then they can share that with their members and, they can promote it to other people in the community, but everyone I've told so far that this is something that, we're thinking about, and we're hoping the board passes it. It's been very supportive.
Could you help me understand the difference between, because you pointed out that we as elected officials are not allowed to fundraise or for the committee that would actually be, friends of parks and trails. There has to be a separation of those. So what can we do to advocate for this? We can advocate for it, can't we? Do you know what the legal?
You can't advocate for it in your official capacity as a parks commissioner. The township cannot advocate for it as a municipality. As a private citizen, you could advocate for it. So the recommendation is to establish a community campaign committee. It can be comprised of some members of parks. I'd recommend that it wasn't a quorum, so maybe 2 of you could be on it. And that would be the committee that would be advocating for the millage.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that you can't create, or we can't create in the interim communication pieces that tell the public what the money's gonna be used for.
Yeah, I think, right, that's what a lot of this is, the
Yeah.
meeting with Lene would be to develop kind of, hey, here's what we would do with this funding. And then share the information,
So
so
you'd
not
like-
tell people vote yes and send them a mailer, vote yes, it's.
We can't do that, but someone else could, the friends
Yeah.
of we could establish the community campaign committee,
And we're.
friends of the parks.
And you, like you saw, like some signage, cause you get people to put a sign in their yard, that's a vote. And that way you could have the Rotary say, here's 25 signs, get these out through the township, and that way they're invested. And besides the signage, and then you need, and maybe Lene's the person who's gonna be doing like every 2 or 3 days, the Facebook posts, that where you keep
Sharing the information.
Yeah, sharing the
Here's what the
information.
village
find out-
report, here's
So
the
here's,
Friday ideas.
here's a picture of, like one day it's River Bluff and another day it's the dog park.
So as we as commissioners, can we do that, or is that someone who's not part of this board?
Not as a commissioner, I think
Not
that's
as a
what he's
commissioner.
saying,
Not as a
not
commissioner.
as a commissioner,
And you need
but
somebody
we,
who's, go ahead.
we, some of us could be on that committee, that, let me just call it Friends of Saugatuck Township Parks and Trails. Okay, because Ottawa County has something called Friends of Ottawa County Parks. So, and they raise funds and they get the information out and they do the work, but they aren't the commission. They aren't the Ottawa County Parks Commission.
But we can share as much information.
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
I would
that's-
think
You
so.
want,
Right,
you,
I mean,
we
so
can
if we
support
wanted to-
Also,
Yeah,
I'll get a sign in my.
But a mailer, for instance, paying for the mailer, paying for the signs, that kind of stuff has to come from this other committee.
right.
right.
It can't come from our,
You know
as I
something?
understand
I
it.
mean, the committee would, the Friends of the Park Committee would hold a fundraiser and raise cash, and then we use that for the mailer and the signs. The electronic posting costs nothing,
Mhm.
but you need somebody who's probably younger than all of us, who does, there are people who are really, really good at that, and I don't know if that's Lene, but
I would
I don't-
recommend Chris Clark. Chris Clark
Mhm.
was an informational technology instructor at Notre Dame for 20 years.
That's
And he
right.
knows how to build websites. He could easily create,
he's number one in the committee.
Yeah.
so
'Cause
that, yeah,
That's
And
the
he
person-
came here and he said he would help us.
Yeah.
and he did, he
Yeah,
did.
he already volunteered.
We got him, the chairing committee, I think we're set.
Yeah, so I would start
Yeah.
thinking about key people who can do things, like who's really good at raising money, who's really good at technology. Who, maybe is plugged in with a lot of the community groups. And then you can start, you can go in, Gregory Muncie's show, or you can get, an article in the Commercial Record, things that are free. And then, maybe do a big fundraising event. Everyone kind of says if you raise 5,000, you're pretty golden to do direct mailers, to do signs. But I would start thinking who's gonna sit from parks on that community campaign committee, and who are some key people in town with talent that could help, propel this forward.
So would we invite Chris to this thing with Lynette?
No, I would say
Keep it separate.
amongst yourselves, figure out who you want to be on this
Friends of-
Friends of
Parks.
Saugatuck Township Parks and Trails. And then from there, begin to reach out to key individuals to be part of this campaign
And
committee.
the strategic planning is like a workshop for us, right? So it's a public meeting, but there's not like a public interactive input
Exactly, yeah.
part of it, right? It's
And we're not-
mainly
yeah.
geared toward,
We're not taking any action, we're just discussing.
right, yeah, I think we're discussing and developing ideas as to, what can be done over the next 10 years. And then I think, right, then Lenny would prepare kind of a summary of that, which would be a communication
Mm-hmm.
piece.
And I can, give Lene that kind of insight that you're looking to be able to create some communication pieces, or if she can take the information that, she gathers from you and turn them into some strategic communication pieces that aren't necessarily advocating, but, informing the public.
Mhm.
Right,
Cause now she'll have the millage
Yeah.
language and she'll have the.
like millage would be used for X, Y, Z.
Mhm. And I can get that all, I'm becoming much more adept with the website, so I can get that all on the website. But then I think the new website will be launched, hopefully by September, and that'll be pretty snazzy.
So we should be thinking, who wants to be on this? Our two members. So everybody think about that and then volunteer and a lot of people in the fire department, you have connections. all
I'm
over.
retired, my friend. I'm retired.
Most of it's up your arm.
Only Dana,
I'm not retired.
only Dana.
That's why I said most.
Okay. Okay, anything else on that topic?
Just
Uh,
very excited that this is happening.
River Bluff vandalism, Daniel sent out, pardon, did you?
Are you speaking? No, I just was saying I'm very happy that this is happening.
Uh,
You want to talk about the river? Bluff?
Daniel sent out a little update today.
Oh, he did.
Yeah,
And,
it's not the best.
police report, basically, they don't know who did it. Someone called, thought they heard shots there. The police went,
Geez,
when they got there, the outhouse was on fire. There were no cars there. The person who called in thought that the shots, or maybe they were fireworks, they weren't sure. But she thought somebody was shooting at milk bottles. And so,
Oh.
but they couldn't find any milk bottles. So like a lot of that stuff, the stories don't completely fit together. I forget what the fella said that lived next door. He heard some noise,
Mhm.
but didn't because the officer talked to him too. So they don't have any suspects. There was possibly 3 black cars. I went to River Bluff the other day to put up my dogs on leash sign. There was a guy and a girl in a black car just sitting there. When I pulled up, they sort of looked up. I'm not sure what they were doing. The guy looked a little shabby. I wish now I had written down the license plate number because it was a black 4-door car, but I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. There's a place up on the upper trail where there are little white beads. Somebody told me that they're from those guns that shoot off. Yeah.
Oh.
And so it's almost like somebody goes up there and shoots. I never heard one, whether they actually make a lot of noise or no. So
You don't want anybody shooting anything in there though. What is that? They like shooting squirrels or something like that? Is that what that would
I
be?
think airsoft is like to shoot at each other with these little pellets. It's
Oh,
like-
oh,
it's
okay.
Like a laser tag, but there's a physical pellet.
Got it.
but they were, if you got hit in the eye with one at a relatively close range, with somebody's
It's
eye.
like ping pong.
Okay.
Yeah.
They just leave little plastic balls everywhere.
I guess, I don't know.
The downside, our insurance doesn't cover it.
No, it didn't hit the deductible.
So
No.
I think it said it was $1,700.
Yeah, it was about there. Yeah, it was,
To pay for, to pay the company.
yeah, and then Glenn had to clean it up, and it was, I think the cleanup came to $575. And then the unit itself was like $1,100 or $1,200.
Was that a lease? I mean, did we rent that from somebody?
So you
Yeah.
did rent it from somebody, and this is, I guess it's kind of a lesson learned. There was no written signed agreement. It was all just verbal. And so the septic tank company says that they don't insure the individual units, so they can't, file a claim with their insurance. And we filed a claim with ours, but they said it didn't hit the deductible, so we're not gonna get reimbursed from it. So I think going forward in the future, we should always have a written agreement. That kind of spells out like who's responsible in this.
Who's on the hook for it, then us or?
We are.
We're on the hook for it.
Well,
I mean, we could fight with them
Yeah.
and say, hey, we're not gonna pay this,
Something that
but
wasn't their fault.
we
Yeah, it's not-
could fight with them. We're not technically on the hook because they leased to us. And, the fact that they don't carry insurance or our insurance didn't pick it up. I don't think we could be forced to do it. I think that we should do it. Because it was an awfully good rate. I would like to, they're a local company, and, I think going forward, I know I got a, proposal, I saw a copy of the proposal. RAF Electric for cameras. So but we'd have to pay for some sort of camera and or lighting in there. And before we put another one.
it's very expensive. It's like almost $7,000 for the electric light and then $3,500.
3,500 for the solar.
Yeah, and then do you think this is a one-off event or put another one out there? Is somebody gonna do it again?
Well, and see,
We don't
this,
know.
This is the second time.
this is second or third time, it got tipped over one time. And then,
Fireworks.
they blew a bunch of fireworks off in it. So they replaced it, so this was a brand new spanking one. that they burned down. So, and, you know, obviously we have not had that issue at the dog park, but we have more people there.
Yeah, the dog park isn't a hangout, although in the past would have bullet holes in some of the dog park signs, but not recently. It seems like we should pay for it, and we could take it out of our budget. It seems like the thing to do. And not replace it, at least not.
Not this year.
We have not had problems before with vandalism out there, so. I don't think we should overreact, but certainly not spend 10,000-15,000.
Well, and it was interesting, because I went out there, so, and it was like in one picture was the burned down porta potty, and over here, there were two dads and two kids swinging on the swing set that we just put the new chains on. So like you had the best of all possible worlds.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, do we have an idea of how much people were using it? I mean, like, did people appreciate it being there and was it being used? And
The porta potty.
should we think about, even though we're getting vandalism, put another one out there and see what happens?
The day that Julia did her steps, there was a large group out there. They used it. I saw one other car pull in and someone got out and used it. I'm not out there that much, so I have seen a couple of people use it, but
I think if we put soccer
never
nets,
smelled
if
that.
we, like, if we decided to go ahead and buy some soccer nets and create like a practice area, then I think, take the extra step, put the porta potty in.
Yeah.
But if we're not gonna have this, you know, the soccer usage, which I think would be a marvelous spot for it. Because it's big enough for, like the 5 to 7 year olds. So they wouldn't have to, try to schedule their time at Shields Park. And I guess if you want, I will go talk to the soccer,
Yeah, talk to
the
Scott
school.
Kajik and see.
you know, see, you know, just say, we're thinking about this, would you use it? If, you know, if he says yes, and, you know, we find out how much the goals are, I'll bring that back to you next month. But if he's like, no, we're just gonna stay down at Schultz Park,
Yeah,
maybe we don't add it in.
One other thing that someone told me, I don't know if it's you, Daniel, that the people who clean and empty the trash were upset because they were finding needles in that trash. And so if that's the case, there are people who are pulling into that parking lot and using it to shoot up. Now, I don't know how much that happens. Was it you who mentioned it, or was it you, Ken?
It was me, because Glenn was sharing that with Jim and myself.
And someone told me, I can't remember who, was it, we talk about it that at night, that people have said there are some kids hanging around, whether it was a neighbor that told the sheriff or someone said that. But
did we get information on cameras and stuff? Did I just miss that, or?
You know, oddly enough,
Like
I'm in that
or-
business. Might wanna talk to me about that.
well,
You
yeah,
do- you
That's
do
what I do for a
cameras?
living.
You do what you're taking?
Security cameras.
Oh, security cameras. Okay, Elliot,
Those two cameras right there,
yeah,
I put those in. I've got camera systems at the fire department, at Douglas City Hall, at Saugatuck City Hall.
for heaven's sakes, you aren't retired at all.
Can you maybe come up with a proposal for what that would look like for next month?
Yeah.
Yeah,
what we
actually,
need.
working with manufacturer of wireless cameras that are solar and battery operated,
Yeah,
Excellent.
and
Bring it next month.
they're really nice. Plus you can get a free app on the phone. View them anytime, you can hand tilt with them. And they've got a little slot for a memory
And are
chip.
they also kind of inconspicuous, so you won't have somebody
Yeah, there's always that.
setting them on fire and shooting them with plastic balls?
That. That,
You'd have a picture of them whilst they were doing it probably, but
yeah, I know, that's hard to avoid unless you get a pole and mount them, where they can't get to it. The way some of these assholes probably set fire.
and I'm not a big fan of the idea that got cameras out there, but, you know, we've had enough stuff happening there that it's probably warranted to do something and say park under video surveillance.
Yep. And a
Yes,
park, and a
yes.
park- do we have a park closing sign?
We've had issues before with the trash out there, like people dumping their household trash, and then we've had issues with people messing with the boards on the dock and stuff. So,
But I think, I know what you're saying, but I wouldn't want to have cameras out throughout the park, but just on the parking lot, is
yeah,
what I was
so he
thinking.
coming and going with a time and date, and if
Yeah.
something happens, we've some idea.
I'd like to consider that, maybe put it on the agenda for next, if you want to come and let us know what you think is the best thing to do.
Okay, if you could
I
just
never
have-
looked, I never looked at Riverboat Park before that. I'll be happy to go there and
Yeah, I think that'd be
take a look around.
great to know. And I think one reason it's because it's so easily accessible, the dog park is easily accessible from the, it's so close to the expressway for one, but from Blue Star, that it's easy to just jump off Blue Star and you're right there.
And Andy Diaz, when he was here, he talked about kids going there. I mean, it's
To
known
River
to the
Bluff?
high school kids and.
Yeah, it's a half mile for the high
Yeah.
school.
But we've never had, I mean, this is by far the worst we've had done. We haven't really had any vandalism
Yeah.
there up to this point. Now, what actually goes on,
I'm thinking if there were kids there who were high, they'd think it was a huge joke to set the thing on fire. I mean, I'm guessing it was teenagers. But
okay, so we'll get to, and, you know, they complete that, they had no suspects, and we'll just keep everybody updated. Park bench. I can quick do that. I've got the two forms to be signed, and I talked to both ladies, and they agree that the verbiage is correct. So I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll mail those in. Pat Denner called me, and she's interested in another bench, and I'm gonna meet with her. If you remember Michael, her husband, that, you know, does someone know her story?
mm-mm.
Her husband was an ER doctor. He worked part-time in South Bend. He was a big bicycle enthusiast. At some point, he was up riding north of town, in Lake Township. A van pulled over and stopped. He, you know, would ride with his head down, you know, and look up occasionally. The road was clear. He did not see this van stop, or at least slow way down. He ran into it, broke his neck, paralyzed from the neck down.
Oh,
Fortunately, since the van was moving, it was covered by that catastrophic insurance. So he had 4 or 5 years before he passed away of that coverage. But it was a terrible, you know, just
I
one
do
of those freak
remember
accidents that are
reading
just so
her
sad.
and hearing about
So,
that.
anyway.
But she wants to do a bench
Yeah,
remembering
and
him.
I've talked to her a little bit, and I knew her from that incident because I forget how
Mhm.
that, but anyway. So yeah, she's interested in that bench, and we talked about locations, and she's interested in the bike trail because he was a biker. And I said, you know, she had read the article in the paper, and I said, well, we have some potentially great spots, but we could put it on an existing part of our trail and
Yeah.
then move it, you
Yeah.
know, so we're gonna go around and.
You were thinking amateur park, you mean that's the great in the future? When you're saying we'd have some nice places along the bike trail? Amateur, is that the name of the?
Yeah, Amalancher Park.
Amalancher, thank you.
It took me 5 years to learn how to pronounce it.
Amalancher.
So don't worry about it.
And that's what you were thinking, that in the future, Amalancher Park could use some,
Yeah, because part of our
yeah,
5-year park plan was to develop a little park up there.
right.
And then with the bike trails, so it's
Little
sort of
benches.
a rest stop and so on and so forth. And it would be a great place to have, and then there's access to the creek, a sandy bottom, a small pocket park, small park. It has potential, especially if you get a millage, you know? I mean, I've seen the grandkids play in those little sandy creeks.
Oh, yeah.
And the little girl said, this is the most fun I've ever had, you know, she was like 4 years old. anyway. So yeah, that's the benches, so I'll get those sent in and our latest is November.
Right.
I would like to, I have that 75 cents, from the folks that have sealed the bike trail in Lake Township and so forth. And if everybody agrees, I'll talk to them. The first thing we would want to do is have Glenn, spray Roundup to kill the grass that's going in the cracks. And then I'll talk to him and maybe this fall, we could do 1,500 feet of crack seal on the bike trail. If everybody's agreeable, I can start working.
Daniel, I thought the bike trail was now part of the township.
Not quite. So, the proposal that's gonna be on the ballot in November is to say that, bike trail maintenance and construction would come out of the road fund, but that hasn't been voted on. That will be voted on in November.
But I thought that's what you did, I recall when we were discussing the budget for this year. That bike trail maintenance would be covered by the township.
I think we had this conversation in association with the plowing. Is that what you're thinking of?
You just said.
Well, we did have a discussion there because we had budgeted certain things months ago for this year's budget.
Right.
For the trail, like additional repair on the fence area and crack sealing. But then we talked about if the township road millage is adjusted and approved. After that, we could consider shifting things. That's what I recall.
Is that what you're,
That's my understanding, yeah, because the
Okay.
millage hasn't passed yet.
so we wait till November, then we can dump this back on you.
Could, I mean, you asked for money specifically for that, and we did give it to you.
Yeah, I think you need to crack seal before this winter.
Yeah.
Cause then if you go another winter, the cracks get bigger.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's just do it.
Yeah, there is money
Okay.
budgeted for this.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll work on that. I skipped to C instead of A and B.
What was parks maintenance update? Was that a thing that I missed that? Sorry.
I thought that's what you were doing, sorry.
It's in the middle.
No, under bench orders, you reported on that, then it says park maintenance updates F.
Right here, we had park maintenance updates and then we went into
Okay.
new
I'm
business.
sorry.
And you skipped down to crack sealing. Sorry,
I jumped around.
I'm
sorry.
typing, so.
Okay, we talked about parks maintenance updates. Okay. Glenn has put wood chips on part of the trail at the dog park in the wooded area, the wet spots. So he's done that. Today, he told me he would cut a tree that's fallen across the trail down by just about 50 yards down from the dock towards the bridge.
Oh,
Which it almost completely blocks it off. What else? Oh, Glenn has added new 2x6s to the bridge. Right now, what I'm doing is I just send Glenn an email and say, will you do this and this and this if something comes up? So, and not bringing it to you guys every time with a little thing like that.
good.
And he seems to be responsive. So if you come across something, you can either do it through me, or I don't have any problem. If you see something at the dog park, that you just go to Glenn and say, hey, blah, blah, blah.
Like cut the grass or something like
It's
that.
up to you guys, whether you want to just
I think it should come through you,
have me do it, okay?
cause we don't want
Yeah,
all, you know, the other four of us all giving Glenn
Right.
Mhm.
assignments, and then he'll have to prioritize.
Okay. So, and when I do that, if you let me know, I'll talk to Glenn and.
Okay.
The American flag at the Veterans Park, if anybody's familiar with Holland during the, like, 4th of July, that Veterans Day, Memorial Day, they put all those flags along 8th Street, if you ever go to Holland during that time. So this group that I'm part of, this Marine Corps League, they do that. They put the flags up and then they take them down. after a week. I was talking to them and they said they would give me a flag if we put it up at Veterans Park. It would involve putting like a plastic, 1.5 inch insert, the flags are on poles. I could get the flag. Now, the flag isn't supposed to be up after dark, you know? So, and we would really want to only do it on the holiday. So I or one of us could put the flag up and take it down. If you think it's a worthwhile thing, when we talk about river bluff and vandalism, I don't want to put a flag up there and have somebody steal, because they're good sized flags. The idea came up, I thought about it. Does anybody have any thoughts?
I think it's a great idea as long as we know somebody's who's gonna put it up and take it
Take it
down
down.
that day.
Right.
And that's their responsibility, because, none of us are gonna say, no, we don't want the American flag.
Well,
And B, but we also don't want, so you would set it up at Veterans Park?
yeah, that's right. So what I would do, I would do it if I'm in town. If I happen to be gone, we could just not do it, or.
Or we could find somebody who is.
Find somebody else that's willing to do it. Okay, well, I'll get the flag and we'll shoot for, what's the next holiday?
Labor Day.
Yeah, I don't know whether they do it on Labor Day, but they would do it on.
Memorial Day.
Veterans
Veterans
Day
Day.
in November, so. Okay, I'll go ahead with that idea. The other one, we talked about the fence repairs, and I talked to Glenn about it. I didn't walk the area. But he said his ability to put in, this steel post, he has the ability to stretch the fence.
Not to get a quote.
What do you think about just having him give us an estimate to do X number of feet along that back fence? That's got the wiggly poles, which is on this map, it would be, the fence that runs along the expressway.
Oh.
Because that's the worst section of the fence. And,
There are sections of that are not chain link, it's just kind of a thin wire that's.
I think there's a roll that buried it in the leaves. I think somebody donated that.
Yeah, there's fencing back there and there's some posts back there.
Yeah, but somebody donated, it just got left.
That would be much stronger than, frankly, than some spots that are very iffy, so to speak.
And we don't want an iffy fence next to a freeway.
Yeah, I think if you want to go ahead and have Glenn fix that, that would be great. I mean, I think it's a security, a safety issue, and
Okay, so if no one has any,
escaping dogs won't run out now onto the expressway.
so I'll come get you and or call you.
I'm gonna be busy for the next 6 months.
Or,
I'm gonna be busy for the next 6
okay,
months.
Are there actually two fences there, or it's just the right of way fence?
there's a right of way fences further out where the expressway.
Okay.
Because they fence the fenceway like.
So we have our fence,
It's,
dog park boundary.
Oh, I
fence is
see.
There, so
yeah,
we have no counties.
This is fixing our own.
and the fear is, of course, if a dog got through there, I'm not
Yeah.
sure that fence, and then they could run, although north and south where, okay. I'll look on that. Commissioners report. I can,
Are you on cracks? We did.
yeah, okay,
We
we
did
already
that,
talked
we did
about correction. I will go ahead and look at. River Bluff, I said I put the, dogs must be on leashes. I ordered, let's finish with the tree down there, so I talked about that.
Just,
So I put that sign out. I stopped at the dog park the other day on Sunday. And coincidentally, there were about 5 or 6 people who are dog park regulars. and we started talking. And they said, you know what would be a great idea? And what the one fellow was doing, he was sweeping the dirt off the concrete pad by the water area. He said people come up, they wash their dogs there. The water runs out, there's a little dam there, the dirt runs back and it makes a mess. So he said it would really be good if we got a Y of the spigot, ran another hose, a little longer hose, out to the, and if you look, can't tell you which direction is, but off to the, if you're facing the faucet, off to the right, the ground drops away towards the fence. He said if we put a sign out there that said dog wash area, we had a little hose and we had a Y on that spigot, then we could run that hose, they could wash their dogs off from there. And then the water would run away, it wouldn't run and get mud all around the other area. So I said, I can go to Overizes and buy one of those little Ys. I've got lots of hoses, like old hoses, like I'd have a long piece like the one you put on. If you think, I'm looking at you. because
Yeah.
you're
No, I
the
think it's a
dog
good
park
idea.
director.
The only suggestion
You
I'd
okay
make
with
is the area that drops down is heavily vegetated or there's a lot of plants there, so we have to clear that out.
Okay,
Pull them out by hand or
Yeah.
something
okay,
like,
okay, well, it seemed like a simple request.
yeah.
Two or three of them were there and said, yeah. And they talked, explained to me why those old tools are there, they do this, they do that, they do a lot of work, so.
Good.
Anyway.
I
They
know those people all by the names of their dogs. I don't know their names, but I know all their dog names. I know all their dog names.
oh, okay, well, you know,
Not
that.
them.
Yeah, well, everybody knew you, they said you were there earlier,
Oh.
and they know your dog, they said,
Yeah.
that guy with that greyhound out there.
What,
Dana, I did not realize that you have the password for Facebook. I had gone to Erica and tried to get it, and, yeah, so.
Password Facebook, what?
Parks Facebook page.
Oh, we have one.
Jennifer left because she was gonna maintain our, so, and we're talking about this millage stuff. I honestly don't know, because that came up at the dog park 2 conversation. You guys don't update your Facebook page very often. Do you?
I don't think I knew we had one.
Yeah,
We haven't.
I better be a friend of the park, shouldn't I? Maybe you.
it's
So,
out there.
right,
What's it called?
Saugatuck Township Parks.
I might be a friend of you, but yeah, if you never
But we
post.
haven't updated that
Yeah.
very much.
I see a
I haven't.
post, I see a post here from 2016.
Continue.
okay.
Saugatuck, Township Park.
Diet Coke.
Yep, the last one I see is from 2016. So, yeah, right on top.
I'm here 8 years ago.
Okay, so if we're, you should probably update a little more somewhere if we're gonna get. I look at Facebook, but I hardly ever do anything. I'll comment on something there, but I don't put pictures. I think there's an old picture of me out there.
Here's a post from my wife in 2015.
Well, good for her.
There, let's see, the last thing I did, July 21st, we shared some information on the Lake Shore workshop. And July 7th, we shared our video link for our meeting. So I've gotten on there a couple times, and then it looks like Jennifer had posted stuff in June about the bench program. So, yeah, Jennifer had access to it and I have access to it. So if that's something that
I'm gonna need
wants to
to
be
get,
done in the office or other people want access to it, I'm sure we can figure that out.
Maybe with this, I don't know, with the new website, are you gonna have links to the different Facebook pages or no? Is there a Facebook page for the township?
there is a link to the Facebook, I mean, we do have a Facebook page. I imagine there'll be links to, I think we requested links to. our
Links
social
to
media.
the, like the township, if it could be linked to the township's parks.
Okay, are we at least, when someone replaces Jennifer, we should get the update.
I can update it some. I'm not much of a contact reader, but I can share things that are appropriate.
I don't know,
Figure it out.
see, I don't use Facebook a lot, so I'm not, I
Mhm.
don't know what to say about it. Okay, well, at least we know Dana has that. Excellent. I have nothing else. Does anyone else have any?
That was your report. I took notes as that.
That's right here for. Does any other commissioner have a report?
I guess I would just say that, I think the village is a historic opportunity, for the community, could really be transformative for the township, so I'm excited.
We talked about it before. If we really get it done, I think that would be a big.
It would be.
And going from like 14,000 to, you know, 200,000 bigger budget. My comment is, if this passes, that's a lot of responsibility for us, so we need to get that through our head. And I tried to talk to John and find out when exactly the money would start flowing in, and he wasn't sure.
Where is that money held then?
Where does it go?
Yeah, I mean, where's
Be
it
a
held?
dedicated fund.
Where physically, I mean, with local bank?
Well, to try to be buried out in the dunes, so.
Huntington,
Huntington is, Huntington is,
Yeah.
but it will be a restricted fund, so the funds can only be used for activities that are specified in the millage language, which is why the millage language is so important.
So the treasurer holds money, but we direct how it's spent.
And I talked to Lori, look, there's a way, you know, debit and credit in the accounting system. So to keep track of it, because since we're responsible for this money, we're also responsible to make sure none of it goes astray. So it would be part of the audit, you know, to audit the parks.
Mhm.
And so I was asking her to make sure. And John, he'll give us more information.
yeah, we need to talk more about that, because I think our treasurer. I'm not sure what the role then, you know, what is the role of our own treasurer vis-a-vis the township treasurer and all of that? Something to be
And we
figured out.
may want to sit down and look at our bylaws at some point and.
That'd be a great topic for the December meeting after with the win in November.
Right,
We'll you know, we'll cross that bridge.
yeah. But it's worth thinking about.
Mhm.
Okay. No public comments.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, we'll adjourn the meeting at
6:59.
6:59. And our next meeting is September 7th.
Yeah, I'm putting in the minutes, our next workshop meeting is August 16th.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, hopefully,
The regular meeting is September 7th.
yes,
Excellent.
okay.
Our next field trip to be determined
Yeah.
with Matt.